So, how does making ball lightning tick for near 500,000 sound, turning every cast of it into, like, 10 million damage? Yeah, this is pretty cool. Hello, my fellow sorcerers, as we get nearer and nearer to Abattoir of Zira. I want to make sure that you are most thoroughly prepared, and while I will be bringing you my min-maxed supreme counter abattoir setup that I plan to take into it in the near future, I wanted to give you the final of the core 3 ways to ball lightning. So what do I mean? Well, you've got playing with the chain lightning enchantment. That is your slow and steady, though it's still ball lightning, so anything but slow or steady, you get my drift, however, and the static surge legendary node. This results in more vulnerable uptime and a smoother resource/mana curve. Then you have the Lightning Storm variant, where you slot in the Lightning Spear enchantment to make all your crackling energies summon lightning spears. This gives you not only a constant swarm of high damage perma-stunning spears flying around and into the next room, but you also get massive amounts of increased damage from all those stacks of Conjuration Mastery. But it's very spiky up and down with the highest highs, but if you get unlucky, you can go a little bit of a while without getting some spears. So today then, we are looking at the highest damage you can get out of ball lightning by combining it with, well, Frozen Orb. Paired with Firebolt, of course, like they all are for maximum damage, and this results in, well, I just said it, maximum damage. Not only do you get to play with chill and chill based effects, thanks to Frozen Orb applying chill to everyone all of the time in an incredibly effective way, and we'll get into that. Not only do you get consistent freezes on enemies and then the massive multiplicative damage that gives you, but you also get a source of mana regen, and then finally you get the raw actual damage of Frozen Orb, which is about half the damage of a ball lightning. And while that sounds not great, half the damage of the most damaging skill in the game is still a lot of damage to add to the most damaging skill in the game. So you start absolutely churning through enemies and bosses with added Frozen Orb DPS on top of the Circle of Doom. And it's enough that it will fly off into the distance, auto-track enemies, and just kill them before you get to them, which adds a much needed ranged element to ball lightning that just happens passively. The other thing that happens passively is it acts as the cold frost damage part of Tal Rashas. So we don't have to just throw a random point into Ice Blades and cast it on cooldown. We can actually put something like Frost Nova back on our bars. And it turns Frost Nova not into just a, well, CC, but a I'd like to do 10 times as much damage now please button. You leap on a back of elites, Frost Nova them in this build, and the ball lightnings will go absolutely mental, and it is so satisfying. It also is a nice little extra defensive layer because chilled and frozen enemies have a lot harder time killing you. So I am really happy with this, and I am excited to present to you my Frozen Orb Ball Lightning Hybrid. It turns out that the best companion for a ball of lightning is a ball of ice. The power of ball. I should have thought about that before I actually said it out loud, now that I think about it. Let's get into this with the skill tree before we go on to explaining just exactly how Frozen Orb adds so much with the help of our friendly training dummies. I won't labor too much here because it is still the core skeleton of ball lightning, like the lightning spear version, so 2 points into your firebolt to give us the, well, 4 things that the firebolt enchantment does. More crit multiplier, the burning instinct board, the flame fleeter glyph, and and easy consistent fire Tal Rasha stacks. It really is just too good to pass up, even if it is a little bit boring compared to some other enchants. It's just purely effective. Then we get our 5/5 in Frozen Orb. This is, well, a lot of damage to take it up to 5/5. Now, technically, I will already say this before we go further into the skill tree, you can completely just leave it at 1 rank just to have it firing out and chilling and doing your frost damage and being the nuisance that it is, but I really do like having it maxed because, as I say, it actually does a shocking amount of damage. We don't need enhanced because we're not casting it, we don't need help with vulnerable because of vampiric powers, and we won't have anything frozen for long enough for this mana to be relevant, so we get to save points here. Then grab your devastation and elemental dominance for the free extra hurt factor, and then go over to your defensives. Just grab your flame shield so we have access to the you can't kill me button, and then grab your teleport to shimmering for an extra you can't kill me button, but with a side of I'm also going to go really fast. And then max out your glass cannon. We are tanky enough to just get the free damage, and then the resetting defensive possibilities of 1 elemental attunement. This then is where it's a little bit different compared to the last few ball lightnings, because we get to incorporate Frost Nova, because we no longer need Ice Blades. Now, you can choose to have either Frost Nova or Ice Armor. If you find yourself being a little bit too squishy somehow, or you're missing a defensive aspect that we'll go over, then Ice Armor is really not a bad choice. However, because of protection, well, Frost Nova gives you a barrier anyway, and then we have the added benefit of this being the I want to kill something instantly button. A pack of elites, you press Frost Nova, and they are dust. That is really one of the shining strengths of Ball Lightning Frozen Orb. And then we want Enhanced just so we can use it as often as possible, as that does help us out. The usual double defensive of a line into Mana Shield and Protection, good DR, and just more total health in the form of Barrier to keep us alive. And of course the Barrier synergy there within. Lightning Spear just as the final button on our bars, because there's nothing really else better, and all the way to Invoked, it turns it into a fabulous defensive cooldown that stuns everything in the room and gives you that little bit of breathing space. It's really quite good. Over to Mastery, where, as you might expect, we get Inner Flames into Devouring Blaze as part of our Burning Synergy Quartet. Fill out your Ball Lightning, and then take it to Enhanced and Wizards, as we always do, and enjoy the infinite crackling energy, and therefore infinite mana with Invigorating Conduit, and this absurd tick rate for such absurd damage. To your ultimate section then, get, well, your ultimate Unstable Currents, Big Burst, and the faster pulsing means more cooldown reduction from our key passive, which will be Overflowing Energy, and then get yourself Electrocution after coursing currents for more much needed DR. Then these last 4 points is where this really takes off, because we can get Permafrost, okay, that's nice, but it takes us to Hoarfrost. This 9% multiplicative to chilled, or 18% multiplicative to frozen, is everything to Frozen or Ball Lightning. Because of this, we just get to do either 9% or 18% multiplicative more damage all the time permanently, because Frozen Orb, coupled with Frost Nova now back on our bars, lets everything be either chilled or frozen all of the time. And this is what takes you up to those 500,000 Ball Lightning hits every time it ticks, and as we know, it ticks a lot. So I really cannot understate just how good being able to use Hoarfrost on top of a Ball Lightning build really is. And that takes us to a completed skill tree, so have a look, and on we go. So let's actually more practically talk the Frozen Orb. So if I just use a Ball Lightning, we do around 200,000 damage. As soon as the Frozen Orb goes out and we now have the chilled going on, we go up to about 250,000 damage. But then once we actually freeze the dummy, we go up to nearly 500,000 damage ticks. And that's kind of the scaling of it. Chilled is a big increase. Frozen is a colossal increase, and it's that really amps everything up, and it works wonders against dense packs of elites. But more importantly, it will work wonders against the really much higher health enemies that we're expecting to get in Abattoir of Zur, so that's definitely something to think about. And then the actual raw damage of Frozen Orb cannot be understated, exploding for just 60,000 there, as nothing is really too rolling, but it will get a lot more than that. That is appreciable. 100k there, 100k there. It adds a lot, and you can see why it does add that lot. And then finally, if you want your Frozen Orb to help out with mana, you take it down to just 2 out of 5, and then you come down here, and you get 3 out of 3 Frigid Breeze, so now every time your Frozen Orb goes out, it's going to be hitting vulnerable enemies because of Accursed Touch. It will generate good chunks of mana amped up by your resource gen thanks to Frigid Breeze, which is really good for spamming more Ball Lightnings, especially above 100 mana for Elementalist. So you really have a lot of extra damage, flexibility, and survivability thanks to having the Frozen Orb enchantment on, and I really can't recommend it enough. Moving on with the what, where, and why, it's gear time. So, on your dagger, and yes, make it a dagger for the extra damage to cloaks, we don't need the lucky hit. You want Conceited for the essentially permanent big multiplicative increase. Then you want Gravitational, so Ball Lightning does its thing, it's sort of unusable without it. And then Elementalist, so we have that colossal crit chance. We will be above 100 mana most of the time, because the mana gen on this build is kind of silly, and we have huge max mana too. I'm currently sat at 150, which is really important because you want enough max mana to cast 2 Ball Lightnings without dropping below 100. Then we have Disobedience on our necklace to keep us alive. The extra armor really is kind of mandatory, and will only get more so as harder content is added. On your helmet, that's where Ever Living comes into it. All the enemies will be vulnerable, so this just makes them hurt less. And then lastly, we still get to use Accelerating, because of course, Frozen Orb is a core skill. It will crit and keep this active, much like Lightning Bolt does. Then, for our uniques, we have Esu's Heirloom. The extra crit chance is very important. The extra crit damage is great. The mana cost reduction is great. The movement speed is great. It's just a great unique. Tybalt's Will to get a almost full mana refill every time we both teleport and flame shield, and 40% multiplicative ain't nothing to shake a stick at. This thing is kind of just the de facto goat of leg pieces, and it's going to be hard to see this ever get replaced, essentially, at any point in Diablo's future, unless they somehow power creep it, which would also be absurd. Then you've got your Aim into the Infinite, pull everyone into you and the Ball Lightning, stun them, delete them. It's just great. We all know about Raiment, though if you are doing tier 90 plus hard content, then I would recommend swapping to a more defensive chest. Yes, this currently also has Ever Living on it, like my helmet does, which isn't ideal, but you want to change it to just a different defensive aspect, and you will be right as rain. And then lastly, we have Tal Rashas, our permanent up to 60% multiplicative increase with perfect affixes and that sweet non-physical damage. Gems put crit damage to vulnerable in your weapons, health in your armor, and armor in your jewelry. And affix-wise, you are looking at the following: critical strike chance, mana cost reduction, resource generation, attack speed. Then you want ranks of Mastery, Devouring Blaze, ranks of Hoarfrost, ranks of Glass Cannon, movement speed, cooldown reduction, and then your damage to close enemies, your vulnerable damage, your critical strike damage, your lucky hit, your intelligence. And now it's time for the Vampiric powers! The usual duo of Accursed Touch and Prey on the Weak for the permanent vulnerable on every enemy and damage increase. Very cool. cool. You know these two, all good. Then your Infection for your 4th stack of Tal Rashas from your poison damage. Then your Ravenous for the ludicrous amount of attack speed, both increasing your ball lightning cast rate and its actual damage rate up to the cap of 200%. And yeah, if you didn't know that, ball lightning does have a maximum amount of attack speed that benefits it, and we essentially just nicely, perfectly reach that with this build. Then if you are doing a Nightmare Dungeon or essentially not fighting a boss, then you want Domination. If you are fighting a boss, you want Feed the Coven. If you are suffering a little bit dying-wise, then instead put Sanguine Brace on. For now, though, I will leave it in its standard form, and this will do you well. So when it comes to how to play this, it's normal ball lightning. Use your lightning spear whenever you need a little bit of a reprieve, or just on cooldown. Flame shield when you are in a dangerous spot. Teleport through the dungeon / on top of enemies with raiment. Use your unstable currents whenever you need that little booster against bosses. And then the big change more than anything is you dash around collecting your crackling energy, so you stay at maximum mana as much as possible. Also teleport and flame shield to get your mana. I mean, you just see how it rolls. My mana surging up whenever it goes down, but now we have the ability to Frost Nova and then do absolutely souped up hits to everything that we hit. So if I was running along in the dungeon, having a great time, and then I'm like, oh look, there's a pack of 5 elites over there. What this variation of the build can now do is you've got your ball lightnings all set up, teleport on, Frost Nova, and now they're all dead. It's lovely. Paragon board will bring us to the finish line then. There is one big key board shuffle thanks to Frozen Orb that I'm excited to tell you about. But for now, follow me point for point. The usual rare nodes that we get, all that sweet non-physical damage, and all that sweet all resist. Grab Elementalist in your first glyph slot, activate it up, get your 15% multiplicative damage, and the amp to non-physical, and again, all resist. When leaving this board, we want to specifically go to the left and then right to grab the extra willpower, as we will need it, as opposed to up here past the intelligence. Then on to our enchantment master board for the usual trifecta of non-physical damage, only grabbing the 2 magic nodes here because we need to save the points, but we can now grab everything over here, which is nice. And then yes, Erudite 2 to then go to the glyph, reinforced, activate it with your willpower, and enjoy that 15% extra DR and that non-physical amp. Over and up to the right to get to our Burning Instinct Burning Synergy board, initially dropping down for Cinders over to the glyph slot, which is Destruction for that silly amount of extra crit damage, down here to get the damage reduction and the extra dex for the crit damage, and then up into the middle for Kindling, with just specifically the more damage to burning enemies, as we don't have the spare points to grab the damage to elites, sadly. Then we head down into this new board here, which is Elemental Summoner. Go straight left to grab the extra maximum mana to help us with our goal of having 2 ball lightning casts above 100. This is what you need, as much willpower as you can get. I've got a little bit over, but you might find yourself only just making it, and then we can head straight down on this lane here, over to the right to get yourself Adept, which is your bigger ball lightnings and harder hitting ball lightnings activated up. I had 1 spare point left here, so I just put it into this to do more ball lightning damage, but technically you could add it to the elites, or you could grab an extra bit of health and so on and so forth if you prefer. Then we go down here past Erudite to help activate Adept, over to your left to grab Keeper of Elements, and another non-physical here you could do instead of this extra intelligence, and get that non-physical. This is super good to be able to grab on top of everything in Enchantment Master. Then we go straight down to our next board, and the main gain board-wise of Frozen Orb, the Icefall board. Do it in this orientation, so your closest rare node is Polar Rime, and then go down and get it through the non-physical damage, and this is an extra chunk to chilled. Enemies will be chilled thanks to Frozen Orb, so this is a nice increase. Then we head down past the other non-physical over to here, grab Frost for even more damage to chilled enemies, and then down to the glyph, which is going to be your flame feeder, activate it with the dexterity, and you can go through frigid for even more DR to get it. So that all sorts itself out very nicely. Then our final board, you want to go right from your adept board in the elemental summoner board, all the way over here down at this point to give this intelligence over this willpower to power up this glyph, and then out into our vulnerable board, also known as Frigid Fate. Head straight up in this orientation, go straight across and grab Frigid Fate, which is almost maxed thanks to all the non-physical damage we've been able to grab, which is excellent as this is a big increase. Then go down here and straight through weakness before going all the way to the glyph for territorial. The DR from close is very good for ball lightning, of course. It is a close range build. Get the dexterity to activate it, and then go up to get the rest of the dexterity to activate it along with 10 free intelligence. You then are done. Here's a more slow panning look at all of the boards and how they're put together for your delectation. So, we are fully set up and optimized then for Frozen Orb Ball Lightning, the duo of ice and shock swirling together and getting the job done. It's a really fun variant that gives you that on-demand super ultra burst damage with the chilled and frozen synergy and amplification, and it's really quite excellent. It also, of course, still hammers bosses as Ball Lightning do, and I have a feeling once we get far enough in Abattoir of Zur that bosses get enough health, we will reach staggers, and then at that point this is seriously going to take over as a staggered boss is considered frozen. So yeah, you are going to really notice it then too. I think you are going to have a lot of fun with this, and I hope that you do. For now then, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe, hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.